Welcome back to Reignited, and we are back once again on our Cummins rebuild here. As you can see, I'm just about ready to put the engine back into the frame. In our last episode, we got the full short block completely assembled. I went ahead and just this morning slapped on the transmission adapter plate here and the flex plate. No big deal there. The only things to keep in mind is that there is a very small O-ring that goes in the back of the transmission adapter plate that covers up the hole for the camshaft in the back of the block. Make sure you do not forget that O-ring, otherwise you will have a serious oil leak at the back of this engine. So that is on there. Flex plate's installed. Let's go ahead and wheel this thing over and get it installed in the frame, because for me, the less I can have this thing on the cherry picker, the better, because this thing flat out scares me. It is so heavy. All right, let's get into it, guys. And I gotta say, putting this 5.9 Cummins engine back in the frame was so much easier than putting the 6.7 engine back in that Ford that I worked on. But I mean, for obvious reasons. For one, this is an older truck, so there's not quite as many components in here. Secondly, it's an inline six, not a V8, so a little bit narrow, a little bit easier. But I am definitely happy to have that part off the list, because I want to get this thing off the cherry picker as soon as possible. But now it's back in the frame, it's hanging under its own weight again. Now we're just gonna start reassembling on this thing. Hopefully I can get this whole top end and get this thing ready for the cab to drop back down. So the head gasket on here only goes on the one way, so that makes it nice and easy. I'm about ready to put the head back on this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and use the cherry picker, because with the intake still installed, the exhaust on there, it's plenty heavy enough. So I'm gonna use the cherry picker to lower it on down here. I already cleaned the deck surface here. When I raise up the head, I'm gonna do a quick clean of the surface of the head itself, and then we'll go ahead and set it down and continue our reassembly. So it's time to torque the cylinder head down. Now it's a little bit of an interesting procedure here. You torque the bolts to 52 foot-pounds, then you back it off a turn, then you re-torque all the bolts to 77 foot-pounds, double check that at 77 foot-pounds, and then you do an additional 90 degrees turn from there. There are a lot of bolts in this cylinder head. Anyway, I think we got them all torqued down. I went ahead and marked them all as I went, so pretty sure I got them all. I'm going to double check and then we'll move on. All the rocker arm bolts get torqued to 27 foot-pounds. So I'm sure you saw me there with the flashlight. I was looking down when I was installing the push rods to make sure I had them fully seated into the valve tappets. Of course, if they're not seated properly, you're not going to have your valves open, you're going to have a misfire, be a big pain in the butt. So that's what I was doing, making sure those were in place. Then I installed the rocker arms. I went ahead and torqued the bolts down to 27 foot-pounds. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and spin the engine over a couple of revolutions just to make sure that I see every single one of these rockers actuating like they're supposed to. Just a good quick check to do. But for now, we are just going to continue on with some general assembly. All right, I am back the next day. I'm feeling much more refreshed. I don't know if you could tell in that video yesterday, but by the end of the day, I was really getting worn down. These diesel engines, everything on them is very, very heavy, and it just takes a toll physically when you're starting to work with these things. So anyway, like I said, I'm back. I'm feeling better today. We're gonna continue with our engine reassembly. Now, I did set the valve lash on this thing, but I did do that in a separate video, so you'll see that soon. So what we're gonna do here is finish reassembling the engine itself. There's not a whole lot of components left. Then we're gonna try to get the cab back onto the body of this thing. So that way we can get this truck just about fired up. We'll see if we can make that happen. One tip I especially wanted to mention here was regarding this valve cover gasket. Now it has the wiring built into it for the injectors. And when you're putting this thing back on, these nuts for the injectors will strip incredibly easy. However much you may be tempted to do it, don't use an electric impact of any kind on this. Only do it up by hand. And in fact, I'm using a 1/4 drive wrench here, little 8mm, and literally just snug, like just barely snug. That's all you need to do. These things will strip immediately. So be very, very careful when reinstalling this. I'm gonna do something here that I do not often do, and that is I'm going to actually pre-fill the oil filter with oil. Now, I know a lot of guys will do this generally anyways, but in my opinion, unless you are working with an engine that is completely dry, as in the case of this engine, there's really not much point to it. There's already enough oil in the system to where you're not gonna burn anything up by not pre-filling the oil filter. But in this case, because it is a fresh rebuild, there's literally no oil in this engine right now. I'm gonna pre-fill the oil filter, that way I can kind of help it along, get that oil there quicker. Finally, after 3 weeks of waiting, we're finally ready to drop the cab back onto the frame. So excited to see this truck all as one piece again. Let's get into it. So clearly a job like this would not be possible without a lift. Now that is my Atlas 12,000 pound extra wide, extra tall lift. Guys, that thing is a beast. And I specifically wanted that one because I knew it would handle anything I threw at it. In fact, I actually designed this shop around the specifications for that lift just to make sure I could use it because I knew that that was the one that I wanted. Now, when I decided to start searching around to see which suppliers had it and what their prices were, I stumbled across asedeals.com. Now, to my surprise, they had not only the best price for this lift, but they had it in stock and ready to ship. So I went ahead and I put in the order. And what was really nice about it is that they had really great communication right from the start. Immediately when I put in the order, they had great communication with me. In fact, I had to have it shipped to my work location so that way I could have it unloaded and inspected there. And they actually called me half an hour out from delivery and said, hey, we're gonna be there in half an hour. Are you going to be there to inspect it? So that worked out really well. Even after I got the lift home and installed it, I still had some follow-up from the company that they were calling to make sure that everything was okay, that I was perfectly happy with everything I had. So again, a very, very positive experience for me. It was something that you don't get a whole lot these days. So I appreciated it, and I want to pass that on to you guys. If you are at all in the market for an automotive lift, they have all different brands, not just Atlas. They have all different kinds of equipment, period. And if that is all something that you are interested in, go check them out, ascdeals.com. All right, let's get back to it. There we go, got the majority of the truck back together again. Pretty much everything's bolted up. I don't have any coolant in there right now because I did something that I've never done before, and I poked a tiny hole in the radiator when I was putting the fan back in. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Anyway, so there's no coolant in there right now. It does have oil. I went ahead and topped off the transmission fluid on there and also the power steering fluid. So the truck is pretty much ready to start turning over, but as usual, you guys know when I like get these things together, the first thing I like to do is I like to plug in my scan tool and check and see if there's any codes in there. That way we can see if there's anything I maybe forgot to plug in. Let's take a look. All right, it looks like the only codes I have in there are for fuel injector codes. And there's one down here at the bottom. Look at this. Engine oil pressure too low. Yeah, that could have been a problem, but they're all stored, nothing active. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear these codes and we'll try to start it. Okay. One of the tricky things about this vehicle is that it has what's called a TIPM, or a totally integrated power module, and therefore the fuel pump fuse / relay is built into it. So there's no way to actually pull the power to the fuel pump without actually disconnecting it. So I'm just gonna have to crank it over a little bit, try to get some oil pressure to it, and then I'll crank it over some more and keep doing that until it actually fires up. Now, the fuel will take a little while to build up too because there's so much air in the line. So I might have to take some cranking anyway. So hopefully we'll see. All right, we're starting to get some oil pressure, so I might leave this thing to fire. Let me check for any kind of leaks or anything like that. Okay, so pretty much a success there. Other than putting a hole in the radiator, I consider that a decent success. So the truck seems to run pretty decent. I'd like to let it run a little bit longer to let all the air get out of the fuel lines, but of course, without the coolant in there, I can't do that. So we'll get a radiator in this thing, we'll get the coolant topped off in there, and then after that, I'll be able to actually run it for an extended period of time, make sure we're all shipshape. All right, crisis averted there. I have the new radiator installed in there. It is all filled and bled with coolant. Gonna try and never do that again. That was a careless mistake and something that could have easily been avoided had I been taking a little bit more care when installing the fan. So like I said, I've never done it before now, but again, once you do it once, you'll never do it again. All right, let's finish this truck out. So one of the other things I had to do on this truck was replace the tires with a new set of tires. One of the original tires had slipped a bead, so it had a really large bulge in one of the tires. So it's kind of a shame because the tires weren't in too bad a shape other than that. But honestly, the truck's gonna look better now anyway. I went with this 35, 12, 50, 20 tire. And as you can tell, I didn't go very aggressive with the tread pattern. I kept it very, very streetable. I didn't want this thing to be real lumpy while driving down the road. Probably not gonna spend much of its time off-road anyway. It's going to be a street truck, so I wanted to go with a very tame tread pattern on here. So anyway, we got them installed there on what the truck came with, which was this 2015 Ram 2500 wheels, which don't look that bad in my opinion. They're just all black. So let's get these things installed. The truck definitely feels like it's all stock. Doesn't have any extra go to it. Well, that's pretty much going to be it for our 2006 Ram 2500 engine rebuild series. You can see the engine is working great, it's driving great. When I was out driving it, I did notice there is a driveline vibration. It feels maybe a bit like one of the rear U-joints might be failing in there. So I'll pop that thing back up and take another look and see if that needs to be replaced. But the engine itself is doing great. Oil pressure is great, coolant temps are good. It's definitely not the fastest thing out there. Definitely feels like a stock 2006 Ram 2500, which of course is no match for a current diesel. However, easily remedied with a tuner, exhaust, any of the other things you want to do. But for my part, I think it works great. You know, good factory reliability and drivability right now. Really happy with the way the truck came out. I like it with the tires on there. It does have a 3-inch lift on there, so it fits the 35s with no problem. Tires seem to be good. They balanced out just fine. It's gonna be a good truck for somebody. So that is again going to be it for this series. Let me know what you guys think. Did you learn anything along the way? What would you like to have seen me do differently? In the meantime, you can follow me on Instagram at reignited.tx. We have shirts available, reignitedtx.com. There's going to be some new projects on the channel, guys. I got a 2010 Dodge Challenger. I'm going to be doing a lot of different things to that. So I hope you guys stay tuned for that. There's going to be videos here, all over the place. All kinds of different content on this channel. If you guys are enjoying it, go ahead and give me a thumbs up or subscribe. All right, you guys, we'll see you next time on Reignited.